But she could get the truth out of her father faster without him tagging along. Meanwhile, the fleet would soon be knocking on the door of the secret rebel base. Renato had better be there when they did. So he had given the Sky Ripper's core to the Empire. He felt stupid about that. He hoped the Emperor didn't bring the Sky Ripper against the base. There was nothing he could do to fight a legendary weapon. Renato hated when he screwed up. One of these days, he would learn to look before he pounced. But today, is not that day. He intoned for his own amusement. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it? Surprisingly unwounded. Don't look down, he thought. The raven was slumped in a pile of its own feathers, like a tree in November.
You can't stop us. The Emperor has a weapon no warrior can defend against.
What happened to you? Renato asked. But the raven chose that moment to go to the great nest in the sky. So they'd made the cord into a weapon. That wasn't good. What was the point of this gate? Did you think no one would notice the lever? long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Coming back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next. Bernardo had never slain so many ravens. The secret base was going to stink of burnt feathers for months. The council speaker was confused.
Our spies say Zenobia has gone berserk. She attacked and destroyed an entire squadron of dropships.
This was amazing good news. He'd shown her the Emperor's evil. Now she'd gone over to the rebel side. Now is our moment. Attack! Bernardo exulted. They could win this thing. Zenobia commanded half the fleet. Who would follow the mad emperor when they could follow his heir, who was wise and smart and a brilliant sorceress besides? But what about the core and the Iblis stone? What evil could the emperor wreak with those? As he closed in on the imperial fleet, Bernardo liked his odds. Oh, how had he gotten into this mess? He'd never set out to be a hero. When he was a kid, he'd wanted to be a great cat burglar, until his mother had explained about foxes and cats. And then the Emperor had gone mad and started sacrificing kittens to the lost gods. There were a lot of dead ravens here. Who had slain them? Bernardo felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. Bernardo had learned so much about... Ooh, what was it again? wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable. Renata felt a little better. There were raven bodies everywhere. The precision of the wounds. Renata recognized her style. It appeared that she was single-handedly turning the tide to the battle. Good. That left the Emperor with only the core. Against him, all the rebels, his daughter and her raven. He wished he was fighting alongside her. But they'd meet up soon enough. What else could you hook? These platforms were great. Renata wanted one for his house. This is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? Zenobia was cutting down the Emperor's bodyguard like they were mushrooms. The Emperor was frantically readying some arcane instrument, brass and hammered steel wrapped around a glowing, thrumming sphere. Skyripper's core. Zenobia! Renato shouted. But he had no idea what else to say. Revenge! She shouted as she cut the last bodyguard down. A ray lanced out of the sphere. Everything around her burst into flames, but her sword seemed only to absorb it. She walked towards Isengrim III like she was walking against a river. Nothing could stop her. They were going to win. Zenobia stabbed the Emperor dead and flicked the moaning apparatus off. She was laughing hysterically. Or weeping, maybe. They had won. He ran to her. I killed my own father. She wept, and he held her. He told her he loved her. He would pull her back from the brink of madness. But the core thrummed louder and louder. At that moment, Renato understood that the core was going to explode catastrophically. And that this could have been victory. The Emperor and his daughter dead, the fleet destroyed. He'd almost been a hero. A legendary one, maybe. If only he and the rebel fleet hadn't been here. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Skyripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Skyripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. The Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lupino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lupino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lupino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens?
Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought.
People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Reynardo had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the Ravens call about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice.
Reynardo looked around the empty village and reflected. The Sky Ripper had turned out to be far too dangerous to be used. Time to turn to what he knew best.
He'd missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like he was at a reunion. Can I borrow that?
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the Mad Rabbit got to?
When Reynardo went to the china shop, for some reason the owner was always nervous. Reynardo felt a chill run down his back. Or possibly a flea.
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lapino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lapino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy.
He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. He was thrilled to be back with his old war buddy. He'd missed the mad rabbit, but something was not quite right. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones. No healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lupino was right. Maybe we should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here.
Was that your shield?
As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy. Like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides.
It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it.
He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato.
But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself.
Trust me, Renato, you won't regret this. I'll treat the core like it was my own baby daughter.
As the Farfarer dived towards the Nexus, Lupino was jumping up and down with excitement. "Stop rabbiting around," Renato said. Lupino just stared at him. The moment the ship landed, Lupino leapt off the ship.
As Lupino vanished into the wilds of the Nexus, Renato vaguely remembered Lupino had a baby daughter, didn't he? And he told her mother he was going out to get some Easter eggs, and he'd never come back. But Renato was relieved not to carry the core anymore. He was already feeling better. And who knows, maybe this time Lupino would get it right. And if Renato could take the outpost, he'd have access to all the Empire's communications in the sector. Right?
That was always a rush. craft with the materials he had. Renato had a pretty good idea, actually.
Renato caught his breath. His joints still hurt, but he couldn't feel the poison in his system anymore. He'd let the armature slip out of his hands to save his friend Lapino. Of course he had to let Lapino take the core. The rebellion needed every man doing his duty. And the rabbit would be no good taking on an Imperial outpost, right?
A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it.
Renato took the outpost with a song in his heart. Soon, he was stuffing his sack with key messages from and to the fleet. Then the far speaker toad chortled a new message. The observatory had been sacked by ravens. Lapino and all the scientists had been taken to the mountains. Why? Why had he trusted Lapino again? And now the Empire had the core. Renato hailed the rebel base to warn them. But their far speaker didn't crouch back. Was the base under attack too?